So, what is grief?
I can tell you what it's not. Easy.
It's not easy. We all know that. A basic definition by the American Psychological Association is that grief is the anguish experienced after significant loss.
But we know it doesn't even have to be a significant loss. It can be any loss. And in an even simpler definition that everyone agrees with, grief is pain. It's painful, so painful that at the time of experiencing it, you probably don't give two hoots what the definition is. We know we don't need to define it for you. Maybe you felt it. Everyone has or will at some point, because grief is ultimately part of being human. No one escapes it. It can't be avoided. Grief is not something to endure for a short while, like an illness. It's something that changes the fundamental core of us. It changes our story, it changes our words, it changes how we view life forever. It's part of every human journey.
Yeah, and some people seem to face more than that than others, but that's another part of human life. The human experience isn't fair, and that's a really bitter pill to swallow sometimes, but actually it can be quite liberating once we come to terms with that. Grief is a very natural part of being human. It's the cost of loving or treasuring something, and it's not something to try and avoid because you can't. If you try and avoid it, or you don't or can't express grief early on when you face it, the chances are, instead, you'll find those raw, painful moments will break out 2 years later when something randomly triggers you in the supermarket.
Grief will always find a way out. It will always be part of our lives, just as loss is a big part of life in this world. Death is as natural as being born. You don't have one without the other, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about it, to use the word death. So much of grief is frightening to people because it's not talked about.
Not talking about death or grief doesn't change the fact that around 150,000 adults and children will die today across the world. None of us have been promised tomorrow. And ignoring this doesn't stop it happening, but it does isolate those going through it and stops us preparing people for loss. None of us know what shape grief is going to come to us in, but it will come. And this can be equally as comforting as it is scary. Because how it comes is often what scares us the most. It makes it difficult to bear and very hard to understand. We all have losses that we think we're prepared for, or we think we could cope with. And we all have losses that we never want to go through. But sadly, we don't get to choose. So either we have to find a way to live with grief and accept it as part of life, or spend our life fighting it as it slowly destroys the things around you and inside you. It's really hard. It's not easy. Grief gets everywhere when it arrives. It attaches itself to every part of life, and that can be really hard to accept and understand. I found this poem a little while ago by Gwen Flowers that really helped me in this aspect. It's called Grief. I had my own notion of grief. I thought it was the sad time that followed the death of someone you love, and you had to push through it to get to the other side. But I'm learning there is no other side. There is no pushing through, but rather there is absorption, adjustment, acceptance. And grief is not something you complete, but rather you endure. Grief is not a task to finish and move on, but an element of yourself, an alteration of your being, a new way of seeing, a new dimension of self. It's an absorption. Grief becomes part of you, and it changes you forever, whether we want it to or not. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing. We can never go back to who we were before grief. As you move forwards, it will always be with you in some form or other. But you can choose to allow what grief is in your life.